am Jody Dahlen, and I am the Child Foster Care Licensor here with Otter County. And our goal for today, I guess, is to just try to rally the troops, if you will, to try to get some more foster homes in Otter County. We are very short, and in all of my years of doing this, this is the fewest amount of foster homes that we've had. We currently have 15 non-relative homes, and that, by what I mean by non-relative, is it's you know, kiddos that don't know the place that they're going to be living until it's safe for them to return to their home. We do have probably 20 relative homes or kin homes where the kiddos in that type of placement are with grandma and grandpa, friends, some sort of significant relationship. And so we do have those homes as well, and thankfully we have those homes. So that's kind of where we look to first when we're looking to place kiddos when we have to remove them from their home. And so I just want to introduce you to a couple people in the audience. Stephanie Olson is to my left here. I don't know if you can see her. And that's okay if you can't. She probably is okay with that.
I'm good with that.
Okay. And she is my supervisor, actually. And so we've been working very hard along with our communications staff here at the county to try to, like I said, rally the troops to get more foster homes in Otter County. And when I say 15 homes, that is just Otter County. There are other private agencies within Otter County that also have a couple homes, but just for our agency, we just have about 15. And then Katie Schur is with the county attorney's office, who graciously came to answer any questions, provide some, you know, I don't know what the word is, but provide some help to me in case there gets to be something that I may or may not know the legal answer to, which would probably be a lot. But this is going to be a general type of informational session. We're not going to probably dig deep into, you know, the particulars. I think one of the biggest things I want people to know out of this is that, you know, the age to be licensed is 21. However, with that being said, we have had some folks that have been 18. We can do a variance to that age component. So don't let that stop you. The other thing I want folks to know is that you can be married, you can be single, doesn't matter, you know, how old you are. If you feel like you are in a place to be able to provide a safe, nurturing, loving environment to kids, then we would love to have you. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. You know, some folks get really worried about their house. Oh, is my house going to pass? Do I, you know, I have a big house, but I don't know if it's going to, you know, meet the requirements for, you know, what you need to be licensed. Really, a lot of the same requirements that I, as a non-licensed person, have, you know, are also the same for people being licensed. You know, of course, the biggest thing is going to be the bedrooms. They need to have 2 means of egress. And by that, I mean the door going into the bedroom and another window or another door or something on that, you know, effect, I guess. Those are the only 2 things I've ever seen. But, you know, also just wanting to assure folks that the things that you need to be licensed are very simple. You do need a specific size fire extinguisher. It's a 2A 10BC, so it's one of the bigger ones, and it has a hose coming out of it. So the little kitchen ones that are kind of tall and skinny, those are not big enough. So unfortunately, the state requires the bigger one. And you can get those on Amazon, you know, Fleet Farm, Walmart, wherever you know, wherever you shop, at least. There's also some requirements around just some things in your home, like your guns and ammunition, if you're hunters or bow hunters or whatever. The ammunition, the guns, the bows need to be locked separate. So, you know, that's another big thing. The guns cannot be visibly, visible to the children in care. So, the other thing I do want to talk about is, you know, there are some requirements with licensing. You are subject to background check, fingerprint based. So that is actually, the fingerprints are run through the FBI, and that came about from the Adam Walsh. I don't know if you're familiar with Adam Walsh, but his dad is John Walsh, and he's America's Most Wanted. His son was killed essentially, and so out came all of the fingerprinting and all of that. So there's that. That's a process that thankfully we have a fingerprinting location here in Fergus Falls. There's also one if you live on the east side of the county. There's one in Detroit Lakes, and there's one in Wantina. So thankfully we have, and two Moorhead too if you want to go that far. So there's the backgrounds. There's also training. If you're looking at training specifically to the littles, there is some extra training that you'd need. You'd need sudden unexplained infant death and abusive head trauma, and that's for 5 and under. And then you'd also need the car seat class or the car seat training. It has changed this year. It's certainly a lot more user-friendly than it used to be. Folks would have to come and sit in a 3-hour class and then be able to demonstrate to the instructor that you can appropriately and safely manage and take out, put in a car seat. Now there's a component that's online, and then you have to meet with, we have a gentleman here at our office, his name is Eric Lean, and he is able to verify that you can put in, take out a car seat. And then of course, with anything, there's going to be paperwork. The paperwork it can be daunting, but that's why I'm here. And so I'm here to help whoever needs assistance with completing forms, having them explained. Some of them are a little overwhelming, and some of them are the federal government requires, some the state require, but I'm here to help. So don't let that scare you either. I also want to just let folks know that we have a great team that we work with here at Otter County. And we have, and I should probably back up in the sense that, you know, maybe to help explain kind of how placements occur. You know, typically we get reports into our intake worker here, and then we have a screening team. And the screening team is a multidisciplinary team. It includes supervisors, county attorney's office, law enforcement, and then our child protection unit has a number of representatives on that unit, or on that team. And any report that comes in, we look at what's reported, and based on the screening guidelines through the state of Minnesota, we determine whether or not that should be screened in or screened out. If it's screened in, we have an assessment worker or investigator that goes out to that situation. And in some cases, because of the safety and immediacy of the child at that time, we will, not we, but, and I also want to be clear about the fact that contrary to what TV says, social workers cannot remove children in care. The only 2 people or organizations, agencies, whatever, that can do that is a judge or law enforcement. And so they're the only 2 agencies that can remove children from their parents if it's a safety issue. So say we go out there, law enforcement determines that it's not safe for kiddos to be there. And then our social workers are rallying the troops back here to say, okay, I need a placement for our 3-year-old. What do we have? And that's kind of where I come in with licensing. And so that's where you come in as potential foster homes. Because like I said, we are so short right now. And we have, you know, we really kind of have to be very creative with where we put kids, just because they're always safe homes, but, you know, we kind of have to be like, well, you know, so-and-so can take this child and, you know, they could sleep there. And because we just, you know, we feel that there's a need and it's a safe place for them to go until mom and dad, or mom or dad, can get things, you know, figured out so that it's a safe place to come back to. Do you guys have any questions at this point? I feel like I'm rambling. Anybody online have questions?
If you're online, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. You should all be able to do that if you need to chime in.
Yep, no questions from me, thanks.
Okay, well, I'll just keep going then. I can ramble. So then once the kiddos are removed from the unsafe situation, then we kind of delve in and try to set up services. What's the immediate need? Does the child need to go to the doctor? Is the child injured? Does the child need clothes? Does the child need, what's the immediate need? Is there drug use involved? Is there, so we're basically putting out fires when we get that child, that we've picked up and placed in a safe place. And then you kind of start on that journey of child foster care. And then you'll become very familiar with some of the workers in our agency. It typically goes from investigator to then case management. And all the while, you are also working with county attorney's office because we do have involvement, foster parents do have involvement with the court. And there are various hearings that judges, not judges, because I'm sure they have enough hearings, but I'm sure they have various hearings that the state of Minnesota requires in order to keep kids safe and to keep them, things monitoring. And is there anything else, Katie, that I should be?
Well, I want to throw out there because it's like court's gonna sound scary.
Yes.
Like if you're doing this, if you're gonna have to go to court,
Yes.
You have the right to appear for hearings if you want to. You're not required to say anything at court hearings. The judges do have the responsibility to ask if the foster provider have any input, if they'd like to tell the court anything about how the child or children are doing. But you're not required to say anything or to specifically participate in those proceedings.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for clarifying that. I was but I just couldn't spit it out. So no, that's good. And I, this sounds so scary. And I think one of the biggest things that people always say, and I've always said, I don't live in Otter County myself. And so I always say, oh, I could never do foster care because, it'd be so hard to get so attached to those kiddos, and what if they have to go home to an unsafe situation or to a situation where it's not ideal or it's not my house, what does that look like? And yeah, I mean, those are valid feelings. We all have them. We wouldn't be human if we didn't. But, if mom and dad or whomever are looking at getting their kiddos back, they have what's called an out-of-home placement plan. And that is set forth by our workers and agencies. And they basically have to meet all of those things on the out-of-home placement plan. And then once, the judge can decide whether or not to return them home. And unfortunately, it's not always our choice. Usually not our choice. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that, but it's probably,
I can answer that question,
Yeah.
Jody, if you want me to. How much,
Yeah, I can
the question was how much notification is given for court proceedings?
so it really depends on where we are at with the proceedings. So how the process starts out is, if there's a peace officer's removal or the judge decides to remove a child from a home, then we need to have what's called an emergency protective care hearing, and we're required to have that within 72 hours. So that first hearing is very quick, very quick. Then generally we need to have either a continued emergency protective care hearing, could be within the next week or two, or an admit deny hearing within 10 days of that first hearing. So at the beginning of the case, things move pretty quickly, and there are pretty quick hearings. After that, after we get past that point of determining, yes, there is a reason for this child to be in out-of-home placement, and we're going to work services with the family, then hearings are every 90 days. And we generally set that 90-day hearing at the hearing you're at. So you have 90-day notice of that hearing. Can hearings change? Yes, hearings can change. But generally we do try and give as much notice as we can to when those dates are being moved.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was trying to be discreet there with that.
No, you're just fine. You're just fine. And Jody, I'll just kind of tailgate on what you were saying too. like the need, being on the county attorney's side of it, I don't get to see a lot of it, but I see like how much need we have for foster families. And I don't want to discourage people. Like, our goal is to reunify kids. Like, that's our goal. We want to help people be better parents, so that kids are safe. That is the ultimate goal, is reunification. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not possible. We really in Otter County pride ourselves with providing as many services as we can to the parents to try and help them reunify. But there are times when that's not possible. And then we do look to other people. We need to look to relatives first, but we do look to other people for permanency. That said, it's amazing coming into court when you do get a chance to see the kids and you do get a chance to talk to the people that are involved in their life, and how grateful they are for the foster families that can kind of be that support for these kids during this very hard time in their life. So that is, like, we need those people to be that support.
And I think, we did a video here, gosh, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I said myself is, it's not about, missing it. I mean, it is, but it's about providing love and care to that child while they're with you at that time. So, if you think about that and providing them with love and stability, something maybe some of them have never had, they're going to remember you. They're going to say, oh, remember when we went here? That was such a great time in my life. I didn't have this and that and whatever. And so I just think it's important to realize that even if children don't stay with you long-term, which, like Katie said, we have the obligation to attempt reunification. That is what our goal is. And so, whatever that looks like, we have to try. It's a requirement that we try. And so I think, sometimes it's easy to get your human emotions in that. I know I would, for sure. So, I mean, you're all, your foster parents are an extension of us. They're, hopefully we're all one team. We're all one big team. We have great support by our case managers, our investigators, our supervisors, county attorneys. I mean, I'm so proud to work here. You have no idea. We are the gold star. I'm a little biased, but we are the gold standard. But honestly, some of the things I think too that people don't always realize is being supported, because it's hard to talk about the blue sky when you don't know the child that you're going to be getting in foster care. You don't have any idea behaviors, illnesses, if they're needing speech therapy, if they're needing occupational therapy, if they're needing, what their needs are. And sometimes it's just, we don't know as much either. So we kind of work through it together, and we're all human and we're all on the same page, trying to reunify kids back with, their parents or whomever. So, the process usually takes.
We do have the foster care support. Yep.
We do have, thank you, Steph, for pointing that out. We do have a foster care support group that we have 2 of them, actually. We have one in Fergus Falls that's kind of for our west side foster parents. And then we have one that meets in Perham for our east side foster parents. And they usually meet once a month. And I started it, many years ago. And then thankfully, one of our former foster parents, adoptive families, she took over and has just been running with it. So she has a great perspective of being a foster adopt parent and all that you see, and just has certainly a different perspective than what I would have. So really appreciate her. So there's that. And I know that it's very appreciated and well attended. They do, they'll do training, they'll have speakers, they kind of go through books together. They have fun events too, where foster families, current and former, can come and hang out, go, to the lake or whatever. Those are just occur mostly in the summertime, but Yeah, and we also have what's called a foster closet. If you've seen the Facebook post for that, but that is located here at Bethel Lutheran Church over by Hillcrest. And if you are in need of a particular item, like a jumper, or a bike, or a car seat, or clothes, diapers, toiletries, stuff like that, that's certainly something that we can get you hooked up with as well. So that's also a great resource here within our county.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
Ideally, my dream would be to have enough foster parents in all areas of the county that, say, a child is removed from a home in Parker's Prairie, that we would have the ability to maintain that child in that school district with their friends and be able to really match based on the child's needs versus who has an opening. It's part of the requirement that us as an agency, we really have an obligation to try to keep the life of that child as normal as possible. And we're missing that right now. We don't have the ability most of the time to keep kids where they're most familiar, where they feel the safest. Most of the time, kids have really good people at schools and friends. And it's unfortunate when adult issues cause kids to be uprooted from what they know. So that our hope is to outreach to people to be able to have that for kids, that they can maintain their little friend groups, their little structure that they do have, even if they can't be with their parents if during that time. But that's my dream. That would be our dream, I think. And something to challenge that narrative that foster parents, are only involved for a short period of time. We have a few examples of foster parents who are spectacular human beings who have maintained connection and support even after kids go home. And that is amazing for these kids to be able to have a safe person, even when they're back with their moms, their dads, or whomever that they live with, but to be able to have more people in their corner. Because the data says if you have a positive relationship with at least 1 to 2 people, your ability to be successful long-term increases exponentially. So being able to just be someone in the life of a child, whether it's for a few weeks or, we've had people that have graduated high school and they're sending notices back to their foster parent that they were at for just a short period of time early on in their little lives. All of this matters, and it would be just amazing to have the opportunity to match kids with people that are in their backyard, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And ultimately, sometimes to go a little bit further with what Steph says, is we have foster parents that have also had a relationship with parents who are a support to them. And, hey, if you need a break, bring little Susie over to me. Even though child has been returned to her parents, they are more than willing, and it's a place that child's familiar and they kind of work together. I mean, that's kind of in my happy place, how I'd love to see everything go, but doesn't always work like that either. But yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Steph.
Well, it's like it takes a village, right?
Yes, it does.
And not everybody has the positive support people in their lives to call on when you need help. Everybody that's going through life needs somebody.
Yeah.
So if we can just help build a support system, that's amazing.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, like I said, it looks like the folks that are here have packets. That some of the packets that are in there, or the information that's in there, it's just kind of self-explanatory. You can read through it. There is an application in there. If you have questions about that application, my contact information is in there. For those folks online, I certainly can, if you want a packet, you can just type in the chat and your address possibly.
I'm going to drop in
Okay.
web address to go to on our site. That packet information is also available at this link that I just dropped right in there too.
Wonderful. So if you can go and get that packet, which is the same packet that the folks here have, there's an application, and there's a couple questions in the application part that kind of throw people off. It's about the municipality. And basically that is the state of Minnesota wanting to know that your place where you live knows that you're going to be providing foster care. And so if say you live in Fergus Falls, you just let the city of Fergus know that you will be providing foster care out of your home. And it's more for zoning, I think, than anything. They just want to make sure that you're not running a business out of your home. If you live in a rural part of the county, certainly a township supervisor or somebody can be contacted. And it doesn't even have to be that you call them and talk to them. It can be just a notification that this is so-and-so, we're going to be doing foster care out of our home. Thank you, click. I mean, it's just a date and notification, basically. They don't have to give you permission. You just have to notify them. So that usually kind of gets people, thrown off a little bit. Well, a question too that some people do ask, and this is probably jumping ahead, but it is something that comes up. And maybe Steph, just to put a little bit of, I think something also is that you can work and be licensed for foster care. Just because you work, full time doesn't mean you can't be licensed. So with that, which then leads to daycare. And so one of the things maybe to talk about is, the county's, kind of stance on providing daycare to our foster parents.
There's a lot of initiative right now within the county to bolster our daycare options. We don't have a daycare specifically identified for foster kiddos. Obviously, it's different parts of the county, but we do provide a daily stipend that to help offset daycare costs. We can certainly try to piecemeal things together about if it's a real emergent situation and we don't have daycare options. We've been really creative on how to have care for kids, to allow people to be able to go to work. That's important. It's a life balance. But we try to support that. We'll make phone calls to try to locate daycares as well, or be able to. Sometimes we've helped watch kids during the day if we need to. Not a good long-term plan, but we will help you. We're not just saying, here, foster parents, figure it out. That's not ever how we are. We are working side by side with you, because these are our kids that we all have an obligation to try to get them set up for what they need. There are foster or daycare providers who do save spots for foster kiddos. It's just a matter of, where is the child? Where is that daycare provider? What age is the child? There's lots of things that we work through, but we certainly support foster parents in trying to find daycares if possible. Is there someone else?
Do you find that the stipend covers most of the costs of the daycare, or families usually have?
So when a child enters into foster care, we do what's called a MAPC, which is basically like a daily rate of what a foster parent would be reimbursed. So after 30 days, that payment starts coming in, and that's where that money goes and is intended to help pay for the foster care for that child. So our expectation would be that with our daily rate extended for daycare plus the foster care payment, that would cover the daycare costs and then some. Within those first 30 to 45 days, because with a county, you don't have a checkbook, you can't just write a check, give it to you. There's a process for that. We've covered that first 30 days sometimes. We've been very creative. Have them bill me directly, and then I'll pay them for that first 30 days, because we certainly understand that you're kind of behind when you first get the payment figured out. But yes, so ultimately you will be reimbursed for the cost of daycare. It's just a matter of the check catching up with.
And then on a
supervisor.
Not daycare, but similar, like babysitting, if you have mature teenage children. We have 2 teenage daughters. One particularly does a lot of babysitting. Do people have to be 18? Like if like we had I have a meeting at work or something and, I need.
So over the age of 13, we need to do fingerprints, background
Yeah.
checks on everybody in the home. But if
We do
we're
short-term
looking for like an hour here or there,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you'll find in the training that I mentioned, one of the trainings is called normalcy and prudent parenting. And what that is it's the federal government wants foster parents to know that obviously it's assumed that you would treat your foster kids like your own. So if you're gonna go out for a meeting or something and you have foster kids there, absolutely, you'd do that for your own kids. You'd have their older siblings watch the younger siblings. So that is by all means a natural, support within your family. So, and then one other thing that I get asked a lot is, what if, can I have a preference in the ages that I want to care for? Like, I really don't want to change diapers, so I want kids that are potty trained. Or I don't want the teenagers because, sometimes their behavior, depending on circumstances, can be scary. I just want the littles. Can I just
on
have
your own children's age too?
Yeah, I mean, you can set that. You can have a preference with, the age group that you'd like to serve. But that being said, that doesn't mean that we're not going to call you and be like, hey, we really need a placement for this kiddo. We're thinking she might fit in well with your family. What are your thoughts? So, and you have, what I also tell folks is you have every right to say no. We don't want you to feel like you're obligated to take a placement because we want everybody to be successful. We want you to be successful foster parents. We want our agency to be successful in placing kiddos, and we want everybody to feel supported. So that's important to us. Like, we're not going to set you up to fail.
And we don't want kids to have to go from home to home either. It would be ideal if we could match and that child could stay there until they could go home. Unfortunately, we see a lot of that not happening. Kids are really, unfortunately, they're staying somewhere for a few days, and then for whatever reason, we're getting requests for children to be moved, and we don't have a choice. We have to move them, but every time a child moves, it's sad because it's hard. It's scary. I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to know where I'm sleeping tonight. And, to send a kid to school when they're with one foster parent and then, not have the closure of being able to, pack their own things or, say goodbye. And then when we pick them up from school, we're bringing them somewhere else. That's really hard. And of course, there's going to be behaviors and big emotions over that. It would be impossible for people not to have an emotion for that. So I would hope that, foster parents can dig deep, and this is probably the scariest, most emotional time for these kids, and their behaviors are not going to be quote unquote normal. There are some tough things that these kids have gone through, and to be able to have grace and patience is something that I would really, really hope that we can get to, where foster parents are in it for the long run. It's just kind of something that we're all as a state probably going through, is just these kids are having to move more than anyone would like them to move, and that gets heartbreaking to watch as well. And I can just go ahead and answer Tabitha's.
Sure.
Talking about traveling with foster care kiddos, family vacations in the summer. Yes, so typically, if you are with your foster child and you're in Minnesota and you're going anywhere in Minnesota, that's absolutely fine. Fargo, we are right on that border, Fargo, Wahpeton. If you're going to go shopping, go out to eat, that's just fine. If you have a trip and you're going to go to Washington State, typically all that requires is to have good communication with your case manager. We will then let the court know that this is our plan and that we're recommending that foster home be able to take Johnny with them on a family trip to Washington, and that is no problem. We just need a few days notice to be able to have that order so that foster parents can take that paper to the airport. If there was ever a reason to question anything, you have the permission to do that. We encourage and love when foster homes are including our foster kiddos in events like that. So it's no problem. And we also have respite. So if there are situations where you just need a break, we have that built in as well. Of course, you need foster parents to give respite to other foster parents. So we juggle that as well, but we are very aware and supportive of the fact that everybody needs just some time to decompress. And it's healthy for not only the adults, but also for the kids. So we do have that, that every foster parent has an ability to have at least 10 days of respite if needed. You don't have to take it, but we do recognize that we want you to be healthy as well.
And again, to piggyback on what Steph is saying, when you're going through the licensing process, that license will allow you have the same requirements, the same everything to provide respite care, just as much as you would have to provide long-term foster care or short-term foster care, emergency foster care. It's all the same pot. And then I was just wondering, Katie, maybe you could touch a little bit, because I do get questions about this too, like specifically, and you touched a little bit on it at the beginning, but foster parents, and sometimes some of them are kind of leery about, how they're known, or are people going to come to my house, or, what does that look like on the court part? Because I'm kind of curious about that too, actually, because I think some foster parents are always like, will my name be in the court papers, or will I have to testify, or, are they going to know where I live? There's some safety components to, jumping into foster care.
Okay, so I'll try and break it down a little bit. But I'll start out by saying that there's no set rules for how long that kids are in foster placement. I mean, if there's a child that's being placed out of home, a lot of times the agency's already been working with that family to try and provide services and prevent that out of home placement from happening, prevent that child from going into foster care. When we get emergency circumstances and we need a foster placement, that's where you guys come in. It could be that the child or children are out of home for a week and the situation gets corrected, the house gets corrected, whatever, and the child's able to go home or able to start a trial home visit or something like that. It could be that that's not the case, and we could be involved for over a year. I mean, that's kind of the timeline to look at. As far as foster parents' involvement, I've been working on this child protection side of things for 6 years now. I don't know that I've had a case where foster parents have raised concerns about incidents that have happened or something like that.
But I never know how to respond to folks when they ask me that. Like I say, well, I've never had it happen to me, but at the same time, I don't know that squells their fears either.
Yep. And I throw that out there because, so is it in the petition that we file with the court? No, it's listed as foster parent, confidential address, confidential phone number. That said, in 99% of cases, the parents are able to get appointed a court-appointed attorney, and all of the documentation goes through their court-appointed attorney first. The court-appointed attorney will get access to what's called a confidential 11.4 information form. That also gets filed with the court, and that does contain the foster parent's name, address, and the child that's placed with them. So could the parents get access? Yes, the parents could get access. I've never had a foster parent come to me and say, I have concerns about this. I would say that most of the time, the parents that are involved and have had their kids removed are actually grateful that the foster parents are involved and they have that their kids are in a foster home as opposed to a different kind of placement. I mean, I don't know that I've ever had a concern. Have you had a concern raised?
I think it can be uncomfortable, but I think that's different than a legit safety concern. And if that were to happen, that's where we're in communication with the case manager. We're in communication with the county attorney. We have protected identification in just a few early on hearings, and then it ended up, being that fast forward a few months and it wasn't an issue anymore. But it's just kind of like, I don't know this family. It sounds kind of scary. I would rather not have my name on this paperwork. And we try to respect that and protect foster parents as much as possible. We don't want anybody to be in harm's way either.
And I mean, that's not to say that you're not gonna run into a birth family at Walmart. I mean, if you're out with foster care kiddo and, birth mom, birth dad are out too, I mean, that's gonna happen. It has happened, it will happen. So, I mean, just kind of being like, okay, how do we, what's the best way to handle that situation ultimately? I think that, but those, I do like to talk about that because there are a lot of concerns about that, and just safety part of it. The state of Minnesota does have a website. It's called Licensing Lookup. And once you're licensed with the state of Minnesota, your name goes on this list. It used to have your address on there, but they've taken the address, phone number off. So it just lists your name, how many you're licensed for. And we've even had, especially some foster homes that are, especially law enforcement, like we had a state trooper that asked to have their name removed from the list. And actually the county attorney's office had to facilitate that to let the state know that it was okay to take that provider's name off the list, for confidentiality reasons. So, I mean, those situations do come up. And just so you know, we will address that as they come up. Don't let that be a hindrance to you applying. Let's see.
Jody, I'll just jump in because you asked me another question too about foster parents testifying.
Yes,
and
thank
being
you.
required to testify. I would say in the 6 years that I've been doing this, I can think of 2 occasions that I had foster providers testifying. I'm saying most of the time they're not, because it's the social worker that's able to testify to all of the information that the foster provider would be telling us anyways. In both instances, I believe they were relative foster care providers. And so that's why I had them testify. They were also permanency options.
Sure.
And so it was really relevant to
Yeah.
that. So it's not something I'm really going to push and say, no, you have to come and testify.
Have you
Unless
heard that where the judges have asked for foster parent to testify and give information?
If they appear at hearings, the judges will say, I'd like to hear from you. Do you have anything to say? Foster parents have said, no, I have nothing to add. And the judges have taken it, and that's been it. The good thing about that is the judges can't require me to call anyone specifically to testify. That's not in their purview. It's up for my office to decide who we want to come and testify. Could you get called by the parent's attorney? Yeah, you could. But again, I don't know that I've ever seen that happen.
Good, thank you for clarifying that. For me too. That's good. Looks like Tabitha wants a packet. I will be sure to get one out to you. It's got 10 more minutes. Do you guys have any other burning questions that you would like us to answer? Anything else we haven't covered? I think we talked about the travel. I think we talked about daycare.
When it comes, sorry.
Go ahead.
When it comes to the training, I know you said the SIDS and head trauma for 5 and under, car seat, I'm assuming is 5 and under, or would that be 9 and under?
9 and under. Yep.
And then, is there additional training? Are there so many hours that you need to have in a year?
So in order to get licensed, you need 6 hours of orientation time. And I do count whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but I do count the time that you're spending on your trainings as part of that. In addition to me coming to your home to kind of meet with you, talk about what it's needed, talk about where you see yourself fitting in for foster parenting. That's also included in that orientation time. And so, if you're licensed for a year, then that year starts over. And then you have 12 hours for each of you for training. And so we have, there's all kinds of training opportunities out there, and I'm pretty lenient when it comes to, approving training. Like, if there's a book that you're reading about, trauma in children or something, absolutely.
So perhaps some of my like training I received to
Yes.
work with is there a lot, because Matt doesn't want to have that opportunity, is there a lot that's online?
Yes, there's a lot.
Like, do you think most of it could be obtained online?
Yeah, all of the training that is required to get licensed is all online with the exception of that car
The car
seat
seat
in and out thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it used to be, DVDs and all that good stuff, but. So it's at least a little more user friendly. And then just another little tidbit that I do like to talk about in this world of social media, when kids are in foster care, there can't be pictures, Snapchats, Instagram pictures of child, even if it's with your family on like a vacation. Unfortunately, that for confidentiality reasons, we're not able to post that on Facebook, and that their lives are their names confidential, which
What I've seen is like people put smiley
Heart.
faces or
Yeah.
something over the face
Yep.
just to protect that.
So
We have another one.
what if like your foster kid and your kid like become BFFs or whatever, and they take their pictures with your kid and post that or whatever?
so you could post the picture if it was of your child and the foster child, but you'd have to put like a little heart over the foster child's.
Right. But I mean, like, what if they go and do
It's a good question.
that, like teenagers, they just
Right.
do stuff without thinking about it, so.
I
Hard to
mean,
monitor.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's a
I've thought about it.
conversation that you as the parent, and
Yeah.
I could certainly back you up with that we would have to have about you can't take pictures.
Right.
Like, if that child is a foster child and they're a teenager and they're taking pictures with the BFF, I mean, then it's kind of them. They're making that decision. Maybe Katie, you have something more to add with that, but I mean, ultimately, I think it's more the littles that we're talking about, like, I want
Right.
this child to be on our Christmas card. It's that.
I would say if it were to come up, we would, if it was raised by someone else, Jody would probably contact you and say, hey, this concern came to our attention.
Right.
Just have to remind you that we can't be doing this, and that would be that.
And take it down and just remember, there's a form that you'll get, if you actually apply and, turn in your packet or whatever, there's a form, it's an agency agreement form that everybody signs. I sign as the agency, but there's a nice little section about confidentiality on the back. And it's really easy to read about social media and all that we never had to think about before.
Jody, I think you had a question about animals other than cats and dogs.
Ooh, turtles, breed
Breed
dragons. There's something in statute about that children under 2 cannot have, well, we can do a variance, but, chickens, reptiles, birds, things like that, in the home, and they certainly can't be handling them. So you can have them, it's just you have to be very specific, and there's probably not any sort of immunization requirement for a bearded dragon or, a gerbil or something. They just don't do that. So
I would say maybe contact Jody and talk out whatever the situation is, because don't let that be a barrier to you,
Yes,
because
for
there is
sure.
a possibility for variances that we can apply for as well.
yes. I'm not a big amphibian reptile kind of gal, so I'll probably be doing that from the other room, but no, there is a way around that. And I think most of the thing is that the children, especially the younger ones, aren't handling those kinds of animals. And if they're in cages, no problem. So, but yeah, good
Or
question.
outside.
Yeah, yep. We're outside.
How long does the licensing process typically take?
So, I think it takes as long as you want it to take. I've had people turn around pretty fast, and maybe I've had one family do it in like a month, but that was really like we were on all cylinders. But I think typically it takes about 4 months from start to finish. I've had it take up to a year, 6 months. It's kind of, it really depends on your flow of life. If you're busy, you kind of have, health problems of extended family come up, graduation, school. you know, but I can be there whenever we can go through this together. As far as
Some of that depends, Jody, though, too, on if there's things that need to be done in the home and there's.
Yep, for sure. That's what I mean. It sometimes takes up to a year depending on what's going on. But, and then how from the first call for placement would be typical?
We've had the day of.
Yes, we have.
It just absolutely depends on.
And what
Any-
happens, you know, is that I get homes licensed and I no sooner get them licensed and we fill them up. And not kidding. That's just how it goes. If they're licensed for 2 and they're in an area where we need home, boom, they're there that day. So there is no typical, you know, if you narrow your scope to your preference, like I want kids that's young, that are younger than my youngest. Well, that might be a little more difficult for placement, but that's not to say you're not going to get called for placement.
What does the home visit entail?
So the home visit is basically me coming out, looking at your home, you know, having you show me kind of where you're thinking of having foster kids sleep. And then I look at your home to see if there's any safety concerns. And I think Jake brought up this home.
Checklist?
Yep.
You go through?
Yep,
Yeah.
Jake brought this home safety checklist here up. You get that right away, so you can review that just to make sure that you have some of the basic things. And that's usually one of the last things that I do when I'm in the home, just to make sure that we have everything, you know.
Accessible on the licensing process page that we have. You kind of have you run through the steps.
Yep.
And with various documents for you to review. That home safety checklist here is under step 2, fingerprinting, home visits, and interviews. Anybody wants to review that at their own leisure.
And then there was a question about any funds or help available to get through the expenses in the first weeks or months.
I had kind of talked about that already, that there are potential funds to help get through those first 30 days before that first foster care payment would come in. And you know, if you've been established as a foster care provider, you might already have some of the basics on hand. But if a child comes and they don't have any clothes or they don't have formula, yes, we are the placement worker is typically, we go to all of our little tubs that we have to try to get some clothes. But if there aren't any clothes, yes, there's clothing allowances that we can offer if there's just the basic needs that need to be met. My ask is that that's a conversation with the social worker. It would be unfortunate if a foster care provider went out and spent $400 on new shoes, new boots, and on all of those things. And we're like, what? I don't know if we can reimburse $400, but we will help as much as we can. Kids need the basics from the get-go. So yes, there is support.
And then again, I mentioned the foster closet.
Yep.
You know, that's another resource for folks. Like if you have, you know, your social worker for the child, they can certainly hook you up with their foster closet gal who would happily meet you at Bethel to, what do you need? I mean, they're giving stuff like it's candy. So very wonderful to work with. And I just want to shout out our administration here at Otter County. And Jake especially, who's back, you can probably hear him, but you can't see him. Him and his group have been so instrumental in really promoting our website and getting forms updated, and so it's very user friendly. So if you do have a few minutes and want to take a gander, go ahead and look, and feel free to call with questions because I think we're at 4 o'clock. So any other questions, you guys? And thank you to all of you online. Have appreciated your, you know, forthright questions and appropriate questions. And as I mentioned, please feel free. We're hopefully going to have these every few months. And I must say I'm a little rusty. I used to do these all the time and haven't done any since COVID. So next time it'll be better. My dog and pony show will be better. So
if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Jody or whoever. Don't let that be a barrier. Like I have a question and I just don't think that this would be good for me or I don't have this question answered, just reach out to Jody and she will do the best to answer the question. We don't want that to be a barrier.
Yes, for sure. Happy to meet with you. If you want me to come and take a look at your home to be like, you know, we've been thinking about it, please, happy to come over. Don't be, you know, no judgments. We're happy to help wherever and provide guidance, and that's what I'm here for. So please reach out. Like I said, my card is in the packet that you'll be getting. Please feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to answer. You can email me too, whatever. My email is in that folder as well. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate your time.